Thank you, everyone. Real honored, pleasure to be here, and really honored by the guests that we have here today. I want to present a bit about what a basic income advocate might take away from the report. Again, keep in mind that CANCEA is an independent firm, and they're simply stating the analysis, the impacts that they see from their model. And UBI Works promotes basic income. So this portion of the talk will be a little more marketing based on what we think is interesting to say about the report for advocates who are trying to make sense of it and what to do with it. Keeping, of course, within the findings of the report, which were completely independent. So it's very important to note that basic income has a number of justifications that go beyond the cold hard economics analysis aspect of it. We already know from existing programs over 17 and growing, actually many experiments were done in the last 50 years around the world. And we've already seen improved graduation rates, fewer hospitalization visits, reduced crime, better physical and mental health, people more active, less food insecurity, better outcomes with regards to childbirth and children's health, better food nutrition. These are things that we already know. But what we haven't been able to talk, and these alone are obviously justifications for why a society might choose to invest in a basic income. These are positive effects, but what we haven't known until now is what are the potential economic impacts of a basic income. And that's what this report talks about. Now we can say that in addition to those benefits, we also know that it can support the prosperity of the Canadian economy. It can be thought of as an investment. This is not the language that we've been using when talking about basic income around the world. Investment language, return on investment language. We know that it can speed up Canada's recovery and grow the economy sustainably, provided that it's funded in the way that CANCEA has shown. But it can do these things. So we can end poverty, restore pathways into the middle class, while also growing the economy. And it can grow the economy even by more than it costs in the long term. And that's really important, because how many programs or investments from government can you say that this is the case for? And now we can talk about basic income in that way. So at UBI Works, we believe that the report demonstrates that these 5 things are true. It can grow the economy and create jobs, and can be good for business. It is a raise for working Canadians. People think about basic income often in terms of the impact for people on poverty. But we also know that 2/3 of people in poverty are already working. Basic income will raise them out of poverty, so work itself pays. And in the report, you see numerous scenarios that raise the net beneficiaries of the program nearly up into the 80th percentile, meaning that nearly the bottom 80% could be beneficiaries, depending on how it's paid. That's really important. And it can be a self-sustaining investment, meaning that while we're ending poverty, while we're achieving those benefits I mentioned, there is ongoing cumulative and compounding economic growth. An economy, bottom line, an economy with a basic income can be larger than an economy without one. And that is something that policymakers need to know, that you need to make sure that your policymakers know, that it's part of the debate. So let's go in deeply slightly on some of the interesting findings that we picked out. It can grow the economy and create jobs, adding over $80 billion a year in GDP on different time horizons, I believe it was within 5 years. In short term, it also could achieve the number long term, depending on which program we're talking about. But both programs showed it could add the size of economy, which is roughly equal to the size of our tourism and hospitality economies in Canada right now. Imagine that. Imagine saying, hey, we can end poverty, we can give people the time they need to seek better jobs and better opportunities for themselves, and literally add the equivalent of 2 more industries back to Canada's balance sheet. That's incredible. It can create nearly 600,000 jobs, both in the short term as well as in the long term. This finding was consistent for both programs on different time horizons. That's very exciting. It can be good for business. Money in Canadians' hands who will spend it in their local economies is good for business. These investments would increase demand that could induce businesses to invest $15 billion a year more in private capital investments. That's nearly 3 times more than all venture capital investment in this country. Again, these 2 things are not necessarily connected, but it just gives you a sense of the scale when we talk about what the impact could be. And nearly $32 billion a year added to gross operating surplus to businesses, which is a form of gross profit. That's really important. This could be good for people and good for business. It could be a raise for working Canadians. The economic activity from the program could cause businesses to hire more, spending an additional $32 billion a year in aggregate wages. That's as much as the combined profits of our largest three banks. So it's a good thing we got Scotia in there. We missed CIBC. And it's a race for working Canadians. Again, depending on how it's funded, it could change what the net disposable impact on incomes are. But here we see that here we could actually have a basic income that is actually positive for everyone up until nearly $110,000 of income. That's basically the majority of Canadians could be better off in this program with only small relative contributions for those of higher incomes, except for those who make more than $1 million a year and could afford it. But very important when looking at this graph is that this is not income tax. The report does not specify which taxes or how it's raised. It just shows which house, where does the money come from? And that could be designed through a variety of taxes, many of which are not including income tax. And it shows that it can be a self-sustaining investment. It could grow the economy by more than it costs, creating $22 billion a year in new government revenues from this additional economic activity. That's as much new revenue to the government, not through new tax increases, but through economic growth, as much as all the EI premiums in the country. What could the government do with that money? Well, if debt is used, it could pay it down, or it can invest in other things that Canadians need. So this is an investment. And it can do all this while ending poverty effectively in the country, raising everyone above the market basket measure, including 129,000 single-parent families, 85% of which are female-led, even with considering the Canada Child Benefit. This goes beyond that, in addition to it rather, and also takes us further. So no one is left in poverty in this country. 3.2 million families could be lifted out of poverty. The black line here on the left shows, and the y-axis on the left shows the number of families below the poverty line, and look at the huge number of families, over 3 million, that are just close to it, just above it. Well, with the basic income, the payments pushes everyone over. Everyone's moved over into that pink color above the poverty line, and you can see increases in cash flowing to families at all levels, moving everyone over into a better situation in terms of gross cash. And in terms of the net impacts, I found this graph very interesting from the study, showing the green line is what the people's disposable income would be, and the bottom x-axis is how many people, the first 20% or the last 20%. This shows an income distribution, and the green is what a world would be like without a basic income. And the other two lines are the two programs that were looked at in the study. And it's very important to note that you can see that right around just before the 60th decile, most people are net beneficiaries. And then depending on which program, they can even still be net beneficiaries all the way close to the 80th decile, where you can see that here is where the green line, which is a world without a basic income, ends up being higher, meaning more money for those people after taxes versus without. But even so, you can see the primary impacts, at least in this analysis, would fall on the top 5% of earners, but not fall very much. You know, those lines are still pretty close together. This is a small step for the top 40%, but huge impacts on the bottom 60, with beneficiaries potentially leading up into the 80th. This is a program that would effectively, this is a visualization of what could happen with what we call extreme inequality in this country. It is pretty extreme. Look how far up those lines are going on the far right. The graph can't even capture how high it goes. But we can have a society where no one's in poverty, where everyone, equality of opportunity has been maintained, has been saved. So basic income can be a sustainable investment in Canadians. And now we're seeing, because of this report, incredible headlines like this, where basic income is hailed as key in kickstarting our post-pandemic economy, where it could add 80 billion a year to Canada's economy, create 600,000 jobs. And we're just getting started. We're working hard to circulate this report. And on Monday, Paul will be on BNN Bloomberg. Imagine that, what people would have thought of as a social program being discussed in terms of economic impacts on Bloomberg. That's what this is about, is spreading the word that basic income can be good for the economy as well as is good for business. There is no contradiction there whatsoever. And this is really important, which I'll explain why a bit in the future, a bit later in this talk. So how you can help us spread the word? make sure your member of parliament knows that a basic income can be a sustainable investment. Share with them our link at ubiworks.ca/grow economy, where they can find the report and find this analysis that I just showed you. And that said, thank you very much. And thank you also to our speakers.